Senator Feinstein would be next, but this is her birthday, so we're going to give her plenty of time to settle in and get ready and go to Senator Braun.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the great successes of the Trump administration, I think, was reorienting Washington's focus on national security, economic threats posed by the China Communist Party. The way I look at in the geopolitical landscape, they're playing with a chessboard, and we seem to be very reactive. Everything I see that they're doing is incrementally building up their military capabilities, but I really think they intend to win economically, day by day, month by month, year by year, to where when that day comes, when they probably will inevitably be a larger economy than ours, they've certainly become skilled state capitalists, we'll wonder, did we make the right moves along the way? I'm concerned that they have the ability, they're patient, I view them as a saving and investing country. Their Road and Belt program tells you that. I think they're hedging their bets there as they increasingly do things that make them less than a handshake business partner. I won't repeat all of it, but the intellectual property issue that they seem to go after with impunity. They way overproduce. Look at our steel industry. They've got half the world's capacity, dump the gluts on the market. We've got to be careful. Ideally, in a world that works right, you have the ability to have free trade. In places where it's not fair and free, we better be careful. President Trump's 301 tariffs were successful in bringing the CCP to the table, put real pressure on the Chinese government. Moving forward, I think they help us reduce reliance on the Chinese market. And by the way, they are a trading economy. We are not, but we accommodate them mostly for our propensity to import, consume, and spend. All kind of abstract considerations that, to me, they're getting the winning end of the bargain at this point. That's why I'm concerned about the one tool to limit USTR's flexibility with restrictions on 301. That tool there, we can't do that. Do you agree that the USTR must have the flexibility to design an exclusion process that also maintains sufficient economic pressure to go along with it?
Senator Braun, I absolutely agree with that.
Well, that's great, because I think the proof will be in how we practice it. Would you care to elaborate in some detail how you see our relationship with China evolve over the next half a decade to a decade, and what your main concerns are about how they're playing the game versus how we're reacting to it?
Thank you so much for this opportunity, because I think that this is absolutely the question that we need to focus on with respect to positioning the American economy today for the future and for future success. Let me begin by saying this. Unless we define the problem, there's not going to be a good way for us to assess whether or not we are solving it, whether or not we are being effective. I think that...
are you doing well at defining it now?
Well, the Section 301 investigation that was launched by the Trump administration that you referenced addressed a very legitimate and deep problem that we have had with Chinese economic practices, which is with respect to intellectual property rights and forced tech transfer practices. But that's not the sum total of the challenge that we have. And I think that in your comments, you have started getting at the contours of the challenge that we have, which is a fundamental economic incompatibility between a very, very market-based economy that we have here in the United States and very strict division between the state and the private sector, and a Chinese economy through which the Chinese state's interests and control and direction extend. To your point about, it would be great if we could have free trade, but you have to know who you're competing against. I always come back to the David Ricardo Econ 101, where you have comparative advantage, and if you've got two islands, one that both of them producing bananas and making boats, but one of them has the conditions for producing bananas, and the other one, say, has more engineers. The logic is that you should have one focus on making boats, and the other one make bananas. They can trade, and everybody is better off. The problem is that that is not the world that we live in. And especially if you expand out that economic model and you say it's not just 2 products that our economies make, but let's say there are 25 products that our economies make. And then you look at the theory of comparative advantage, and then you realize the advantages are not always natural. When you're working with another economy, even in the simplistic model, where that economy is not is a state capitalist model, that economy is going to be able to target and take over entire industries and create advantages that the market-based economy doesn't have. That's the fundamental challenge that we have. And unless we start focusing on identifying that as the problem and thinking through how we address it, I think that we condemn ourselves to repeating cycles of experiences that we've had from steel and aluminum to solar. Right now, the Chinese government, the PRC, is looking very closely at semiconductors and a number of other strategic industrial areas that are going to be critical for our future and our future competitiveness. And so from me to you, my answer is we need to be keeping our eye on the ball on this bigger picture. And with respect to all of the economic challenges and the pinches that we and Americans are experiencing right now, it is our responsibility to do what we can to provide that relief. But I will just be very, very clear with respect to tariffs and trade tools. We can impact the design of our competition, and we can impact the competitiveness of our economy in the medium and the long term with respect to short-term challenges. There is a limit to what we can do with respect to especially inflation.
I agree.
Thank you, Senator Braun.
The long run is always the bigger consideration, and it's tough to navigate correctly through the short run, but it sounds like you got a handle on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Braun. Senator Feinstein.
Thank you very much.